All right. So well, you folks are all here, obviously. Um, but for if you want to watch any of this back again, I'll release a recording. Before I start today's lesson 2.1, I wanted to give you a chance to ask any questions about things that you might have concerns about thus far. So we've been going now for 4 days. The way to think of summer school, folks, a week of summer school is like a month of school. Okay, a week of summer school is like a month of school. So if we were in day school together, we would be about late September by now. We'd be in late September. So things are going to start picking up, but we have 4 weeks instead of 5 months. So a week is about, give or take. So I'm going to give you a chance. Feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand if you have a question, like anything that you might need clarification on in terms of how to submit assignments or due dates or the course calendar. I'd love to take those questions before we get into the lesson. It's super awkward because I can't see you and I can't just call on students like in a class. But if there's, someone asked a question in the chat. Okay, for the task we have, are the due date. Yeah, great question. Great question. Let me open the calendar. So that's a really good question, understanding the big picture. So folks, in my ideal world, I would love to use Google Classroom. Due dates are a little easier to assign, but right now on my screen, I'm looking at the calendar. If you can't see that, can someone jump in on the chat and let me know? Okay, so first of all, will we lose marks? I have a late policy of 3% off a day. That said, if you email me, and many of you have, a couple people lost power in their building or family commitments. If you email me a couple days out and say, sir, I need an extra day or two, I'm not going to deduct marks at all. It's the I don't hear from you, and then we're 5 days past the assignment due date, that I start to say, well, that's not really fair to the students who got it in early. But if you're conscientious and you message me or email me, sorry, a couple days out, I'm not gonna deduct marks. Just let me know, right? Keep me in the loop. As I said in my first video, aside from making a schedule, the very best thing you can do for success in this class is keeping me in the loop, emailing me. Okay. Now that said, so things are always due at 11:59 on the day. Okay, so 2.1, we're going over it today. And then 2.2 will be due by 11:59. Now, someone emailed me and said, sir, I've got a socially distanced family get-together this afternoon, and asked for an extra day. That's no problem. No problem at all. Okay, but yeah, they are due on the day. Now, one of the things you're going to notice, take a look next week. We only have we have 2 assignments. We have a quiz on Monday, and then we're spending 3 days on one assignment. This is a big assignment. It's a major essay in this unit. I'll explain it actually next week, but and I'll refer to it a lot during our tutorial today. There's nothing due on these days. That said, if on Friday night you're working on this assignment, you really won't do well. The stuff we've done so far has been very easy. I assume you found it easy. It's like icebreaker, kind of get used to the course stuff. But the essay, if I give that many days, obviously it's going to take you longer to write. Okay, but things are always due at 11:59. The other thing I wanted to draw attention to is the reading. Some of you, or yesterday's task in 1.6 was to create the reading journal. You just created it. It's not due, the journal itself, until the 13th. You can see that's task 2.6. I would not leave it for Sunday night to do that journal. What I would do is you'll see approximately every 100 pages of your ISP book, you're required to do a journal entry. So I would keep on top of those things. It's a very long-winded way of saying, if you keep me in the loop, I am not going to deduct late marks. Hope that answers your question. Any other questions about the course in general? All right, feel free to ask, or at the end, if you're having questions, feel free to jump in. All right, let's talk about rhetoric. So here's what I'd like you to do. If you're able, go. I mean, I'll have my screen projected, but we're going to start on. The goal today is to look at the instructions provided in 2.1, and the reason I'm doing this tutorial live is 2.1, what we're going to talk about today, ethos, pathos, logos, the rhetorical appeals. You're not going to just see them in 2.2. You're going to see them in 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, and your final exam. So it's a pretty big deal. All right, so we'll go to 2.1. The major handout is this guy right here. So you can open it, although you might want to follow along on mine. Oh, sorry. And this is the doc that we'll be referring to. And we're going to talk about rhetoric. Okay, rhetoric. So what I'll do as I go is I'll highlight a few things to draw attention, but I'm going to pause, and I will need you to jump in a little bit. The worst part of online learning during the pandemic is like me just talking, and I assume maybe some of you right now have already gone back to checking your Instagram or something. So I'm going to pause a few times just to make sure that you might have any questions, or if you have any questions or for clarification, it really helps. All right, rhetoric. The Greek philosopher Aristotle defined rhetoric as the faculty of observing, in any given case, the available means of persuasion. The available means of persuasion. Ladies and gentlemen who are going to university next year and studying maths and sciences, for the first people, the ancient Greeks, they did not learn math and science. It wasn't important to them. The most important thing for the ancient Greeks, the first like sort of civilized culture to have organized education, was rhetoric, persuasion. Why? If you're a Greek warrior and you're about to fight with another Greek culture that has superior military power, you wanted to talk about that first. They wouldn't just go in battle. They would talk about it. And persuasion was so important. It was so important to be able to communicate your ideas. Here's one that we're going to talk about. I thought one that would be relevant for some of you as you head into your grade 12 year. Using rhetoric when it matters most. So the goal is to get a date for prom. That's going to be our goal. We're going to use 3 different methods to convince him or her that he or she should go with you to prom. So rhetoric happens all the time. Mom, can I borrow the car? Justin Trudeau trying to persuade us that the right thing to stop COVID-19 is to stay at home. Your major assignment, which you're going to work on later today, you're actually going to, let me just show this to you now, you're going to pick one of these 3 sort of resolutions, they're right here, and you're going to persuade us. You're going to use rhetoric to persuade us of your opinion. Let me read these to you real quick. This is what you'll be doing at the end of today's lesson. Number 1, the racial injustices seen in the United States over the past several weeks are not as severe as in Canada. The racial injustices seen in the United States over the past several weeks are not, actually, I'm so sorry, are not as severe as in Canada. A second option, and you're only going to write about one of these. Students who'd stop doing schoolwork after it was announced their marks could not drop will likely suffer long-term consequences. That's a good one. Students who stopped doing schoolwork, like in March, after it was announced their marks could not drop, will likely suffer long-term consequences. Agree or disagree? And the third one, the social distancing brought about by the COVID-19 shutdowns revealed who my true friends are. I really like that one, actually. Who are my true, did it reveal who your true friends are? So we're going to actually put everything I talk about over the next 20 minutes into practice. You're going to choose one of these and you're going to turn it into kind of a 300 to 500 word response, persuading your audience that that you're correct. And you could agree with the statement, you could disagree with the statement, or you could even partially agree. So you're going to choose one of these. So let's go back and talk about what rhetoric actually entails. So at its best, rhetoric is thoughtful, reflective activity leading to effective communication, including rational exchange of opposing viewpoints. That's at its best, and that's what I'm going to have you do in 2.2. First part is to write your own, let's say, 400-word response. The second part is to respond to somebody else's politely. Some of you have probably been in debates before, and it ends up with you saying something like, am I right? Am I right? Am I right? And then the person is, they say something like, yeah, well, my dad could beat up your dad. Or so's your face, or so's your mom, or something like that. The rational exchange of opposing viewpoints deteriorates. And so rhetoric, we're going to still be polite. All right, so I want to talk to you today mostly about invention. Invention is the process of coming up with the ideas. Okay, invention is the process of coming up with the ideas for speaking or writing. And according to Aristotle, under the heading of invention are the three great proofs. Ethos, let's highlight all of these. Ethos is the first one. Logos is our second rhetorical appeal. And pathos is the third one. Okay, so let's talk about them, and then we're going to put them into practice. And then in your task, you're going to really put them into practice. Okay, so ethos, the first one. Ethos, and I'm going to highlight the key words. Ethos is an appeal based on the character or the credibility of the speaker or the writer. Okay, so you want to borrow the car from mom or dad. Ethos appeal. I've never been in an accident before. You can trust me. You've seen me drive before. Okay, this is ethos. It has to do with the speaker. It has to do with you. Okay, if Barack Obama is giving a speech and he says, as the former president of the United States of America, that's ethos. It sounds like a flex, but it's actually persuasive. It's actually persuasive. Here are the key words. Credibility, trustworthiness, and believability of the speaker. It's all about the speaker. See, trust is key. Trust is very key in getting your audience to believe you. Okay, this kind of appeal is established by the way the argument sounds. That happens as well. Okay, in addition to who the person is, it also has to do with how they sound. So if I say, Mom, can I borrow the car? You can trust me, Mom. They lose credibility. You can trust me. You lose credibility because you don't sound trustworthy. Okay, so this is ethos. All right, so I need you to weigh in here. Let's jump on to the other doc. And I want us to use ethos to get a date for prom. Okay, so if you're promposing, how would you get a date for prom? I'd love someone either in the chat or to unmute themselves. It's going to be awkward for a second while someone decides to be super brave for us. What would you say to get someone to agree to go to prom with you? Could someone either unmute or jump in on the chat? Using ethos. ethos, let me go back, has to do with so you're the speaker, you're making this request, you're asking, will you go to prom with me? And to get the person to agree, you want to use your own credibility, your own trustworthiness. How would you appeal to your own credibility? What could we say? So Laura says, we've known each, yeah, great one. Right, this is, oops, sorry, I'm on the wrong thing here. Thank you, Laura, that's excellent. We have known each other for a long time. That's great. You know why that's credibility? Because it's almost like a background check, right? It's almost like a background check. The promposee, yeah, the person being proposed to, can then go through their mind and think, yeah, okay. Yeah, I have known them for a long time. So as the person then, the person being proposed to, let's assume a girl is being proposed to in this very traditional, stereotypical promposal, but that's the assumption we'll use. What would she be thinking? What would she be thinking if she's known him for a long time, as she's doing this background check on his motives? What would she maybe conclude about his character? What conclusion might, somebody might say, if someone says we've known each other for a long time, and the girl's like, oh yeah, and totally, I know your reputation. That's not good. That's not ethos. That's bad news. Okay, so what I'm wondering is, as she does this background check, what things might she conclude about his character, about his credibility? Yeah, Caitlin, go ahead.
Hi, sir.
Hi, how are you, Caitlin?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Okay, what could he say? What would she conclude?
Well, I would conclude that, is he mature enough to take me to prom? Like, will he take care of me if something bad happens?
Say, I will take good care of you, right? Again, maybe, and then he could add, as I've always done in the past, right? As I've done in the past, right? His credibility, he's got a good reputation. Anything else? Let's get one more. How else would he use his own credibility? I don't know if guys still do this, but when I was in high school, it was expected that I paid. So I'm going to say, I have a part-time job and can pay for everything. Okay, so there we go. These are the kinds of these are the kinds of ideas you would use using ethos. Okay, to use ethos to successfully get a prom date, you would, let me go back to the original, you would appeal to your own character, your own trustworthiness. Okay, all right, let's go on to the second one. Let's go on to logos. Okay, so our goal is still the same. I want you to think about this so I can get a few more people participating this time. The goal is still to get a prom date. This time, instead of using ethos, my own credibility, I'm going to use logos. And logos is an appeal based on the logic, okay? The logic of a written or spoken message. It has to do with the words, the content. This refers to the logical thinking and reasoning. So good reasoning, folks. You would have used this a lot in essay writing in the past, when you used words like, well, the first reason And the second and thirdly and finally, this is the kind of logos. It's like, this is really key. It's about the evidence. Its main concern in logos is the supporting evidence. The supporting evidence that proves the audience's stance, the author's stance or claim. If you could, let me just start my video for a second. It's like this. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, it's kind of like this systematic, even statistical kind of method to persuade someone. So let's go back to here. Tell me how I could use logos. Logical. What is logical evidence that the promposal, the guy might use to get the girl to go to prom with him? I'd love for you to weigh in here. Okay, let me edit this box. And we are gonna go, I think I was using 18. Just give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. So Alexia says, well, technically we're the only people, there is no one left. There is no one else. Yes, that's a good one, right? It's statistic. Everybody else has a date. So there's no one left. That's right. That's a great, right? Like systematic, no one. It's a new number approach. Very good. You're gonna go with someone. Daniel says you're gonna go with someone. Okay, so Daniel, great one. It totally depends on which word in that sentence you emphasize. So if you say, why can't it be me? I'm gonna actually save that for pathos, because pathos is an emotional appeal. But I think the first thing you said is absolutely right, Daniel. It's great. You have to go with someone. You have to go with someone, right? You have to go with someone. The second half of why can't it be me? We're gonna save for pathos. Oh, Lara, is it Lara or Lara? I'm so sorry. Feel free to do a weigh in. But yeah, it would, again, statistical, it would be more fun. It's almost like prom with me equals more fun. Prom without me is less fun. Very good. All right, that one was easier. So this is our logos. So let me zoom out so we can start to see our appeal coming together. We've got ethos based on credibility. We've got logos based on evidence and statistics. Now, you're not going to say, well, statistically speaking, it would be more fun, but that's what you mean. All right, last one, my favorite one is pathos. Okay, pathos. Let me actually move this up just a little bit. Okay, so we're going to talk about pathos. Pathos is the good one. Pathos is emotional. It is an emotional appeal. Okay. Keywords again are, pathos is Greek for emotion and is the appeal the argument makes to the audience's feelings. All about feelings on this one. You can advance your arguments by appealing to the audience's emotion, because people are swayed not only by ideas, by what their emotions or their feelings tell them. It's so true. Okay? It's so true. You know, you often can lose a debate if you insult you insult somebody, right? If you're having a debate about politics and you say something like, you're such an idiot, okay? That could be accurate. Right? That could be very accurate. They could be an idiot. But as soon as you emotionally offend them, it's over. You'll never achieve you'll never convince them, because you offended them, right? You've offended them, and so the argument's over. So let's get on to making this matter. How could I use emotion? The first girl I asked to prom, when was this? 1998. Still remember it very distinctly. It's a traumatic time for me. Carolyn Lightfoot. Please don't Facebook her or something, but I tried to use pathos. Now, if you're me proposing using pathos or emotion, please tell me, what are you going to use on this one? How do you use pathos to, how do you appeal to her emotions? Caitlin, yeah, please.
Hi. I would say like you don't want to regret on missing out on like a traditional high school experience.
Yeah, you don't want to have regrets. You don't want to have regrets, right? You appeal to her sense of like missing out. That's a feeling. Okay, it's not logical. It's not logical, and it's not about you. So it's not logos, and it's not ethos. It's pathos. It's appealing to her feeling, her sense that she might have regrets. What's another pathos appeal? Thanks, Caitlin. Erica's Brandon, yeah. It's the last time we'll ever see each other. Oh, that sounds manipulative, but yeah, very good. It's the last time you or we might ever see each other, as if you're like going off to battle or something, like you're going to war. Yeah, but very good. It's emotional. It's not the last time you'll see each other. You'll still you'll exchange pictures, and you'll probably see at reunions, and you may even see them later this summer, but it's a good time to evoke some emotion. Oh, that's a great one. Erica's so good. No one else will go with me. Okay, no one else will go with me. That's a really, really good one. Totally pathos. It's just like, it's totally evoking the feeling of guilt. Okay, so when we use this emotion, you don't want to have regret. You're appealing to the you don't want her to live. She doesn't want to live with regret. That's a feeling, an emotion. The last time we might see each other, another feeling, the feeling of missing out. The last one is guilt. It's a guilt trip. Some of you, when you're asking your mom to borrow the car or your dad to borrow the car, you use pathos when you say, you start with ethos. You can trust me. I'm a good driver. You can trust me. If that doesn't work, you immediately slip into the pathos and you say, why don't you love me? Okay, so you immediately go to this like emotional place that is so illogical, but often it gets results. So, yeah, so I want to talk, I'm going to skip arrangement for now. I'm back on the Intro to Rhetoric page, and we're going to come to style next week. But what I'd like to show you now is how these all fit together, and you're going to see the rhetorical triangle a few times. So here's what this looks like when we put all three of the appeals together. So you can see this blue, green, and red infographic is great. Ethos has to do with trustworthiness, intelligence, morals. It's about believability. Pathos has to do with emotion, prejudice, motivation. And logos has to do with evidence, data, truths. Oh, sorry, who asked that question? You've got a short form there. KB, can you tell, Calcium. Yeah, ads have a ton of emotion. I wanted to show you one in a moment that evokes a good deal of pathos. Yeah, usually a good so we're talking about pathos for a second here. Often what they sell you is the feeling of a lifestyle. If you buy this product, you will be happy. Right? No, you won't. Like, then they're going to sell you something else right after that. But absolutely. Let me actually show you a good pathos appeal. It is Justin Trudeau's, one of the first speeches he did, like when the pandemic started. This is dated March 23rd. I want to show you a good pathos appeal that Trudeau's used. Please, if you can't hear it, tell me in the chat as it comes on.
together. We've seen people out at large parties together. Do you think it's just a question of people not getting the message? Because you're talking a lot about messaging today.
So again, weigh in if you can't hear Trudeau's response. Just message in the chat.
I think that people need to get the message that this isn't just about them. This is about their neighbors. This is about vulnerable seniors. This is about health workers who are on the front lines trying to keep us all safe. Canadians can and must do their part to keep us all safe. When we see images of people out enjoying the sunshine in large groups, that is extremely concerning because they are not just putting themselves at risk, they are putting everyone else at risk. We need to slow and stop the spread of this virus if we are going to come through this strongly as a country without losing too many of our loved ones.
So what I want you to hear there, the key, pay those words. I don't know if you caught them. When he uses the word vulnerable, when he uses our loved ones, right? Purely pathos. Okay, if he was using logos to get you to stay home, they would have talked, and they did this, right? They would have talked about, I'm sure many of you are following the numbers. The numbers, what are the numbers? How many new cases? How many new deaths? How many people in intensive care units? That's logos. Okay, that's all logos. Pathos is think about your grandma. Okay, that's pathos. Think about your grandma. You know, here this is really interesting. I don't know if you folks remember, but early on, Trudeau left Ottawa and went to Quebec or something. He went to visit his wife and children. Now, I don't actually believe he had broken a law, but it seemed suspicious. It was the same way Doug Ford spent, it's either Easter or Mother's Day with his daughters, and they lost credibility. Okay, so you can see that when someone's trying to persuade you, all three appeals are at work. All three appeals. Right at the center of the rhetorical triangle, folks, where did it just go? So sorry. Is what we call our purpose. Purpose is so key. Okay, the goal, whether it be to get someone to go to prom with you or to get the whole country to stay at home, you have a goal. If it's to get you to get the car from your mom, to get a part-time job, whatever your rhetorical purpose is, that's always the center. That's always the goal. The purpose. If you were writing an essay, we'd call it a thesis. It's the central message. Each of the appeals plays into it. Okay? So again, if my purpose is to get my country to stay home, they aren't going to do it if I myself don't stay home. I lose ethos. They aren't going to do it if I don't evoke these emotions about think about our loved ones. And they aren't going to do it if I don't have some statistical evidence to back it up. Okay? The last part of the rhetorical triangle, and that's why I've drawn this black circle around it, is what we call context. Context has to do with when it's happening. Okay, so I can remember right when the schools were closed, I had to go to Rona to get something. And I turned on the radio and I heard Trudeau say, go home and stay home. Like he said it. And in that moment, that was my context. It just resonated. It resonated a ton. The cases were spiking. I was feeling scared, right? The cases are spiking. That's the logos part of it. The pathos part was I was like afraid. The ethos part of it was like Trudeau had just declared he was in he was in self-quarantine because his wife had it. But what really made it resonate to me was in that exact moment. That was the context. It really sunk in. So the rhetorical triangle, the purpose, right? It connects all of these things. If I go to our promposal example, if you prompose in September for prom in June, probably going to get a no because the context isn't right. But if you prompose, right on the cusp of everybody else promposing and she's starting to feel I could be left out, starting to feel it, then your context is good. You're in the right moment. So all of those things have to come together. Okay. Some of you are going to write about Black Lives Matter, George Floyd in your 2.2 task this afternoon. The context for discussions about racial inequalities is right. R-I-G-H-T, not W-R-I-T. It's right. It's the right time, right? Because these things are happening all over the world. Okay, that's what context means. Okay, so all of those things come together. Now, the last thing I want to mention to you is balance. Okay, balance. Balance is right here. And then I'm going to turn you loose. So balance. The writer must have all three. If you emphasize message, if you have too much logos, if you're that like, well, firstly and secondly and thirdly, then you risk forgetting your audience. Your audience feels like you're arrogant and they won't listen to you. Or you don't seem like a trustworthy person because you're all about your points, your points. Secondly, if you're too emotional, right? If you have too much pathos, then your content, right? Mommy, why don't you love me? She's looking at you like, yeah, but okay, I love you, but what reasoning do I have to give it to you? What reason do I have to trust you? What's the logic of it? And lastly, if you focus on yourself, if you have too much ethos, if you're like, well, you've known me forever, right? Then you might come across as an egotist or a blowhard, right? Someone who's full of themselves. Okay, and so what Aristotle said is this: the purpose of your communication, right in the center, right here, right in the center, the purpose, that is your rhetorical goal. What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to achieve? And when you have good balance between ethos, pathos, logos, when you're clear in your messaging, when the context is right, here's what Aristotle said, and I'll put this right here. Sorry, we don't need this handout. Aristotle said, let me write this. I'll put it in font 30. When it all comes together, you will achieve, and this is a Greek phrase. It's not my phrase, but I really like it. Maximum persuasive effect. Oh, so sorry that didn't. Maximum persuasive effect. It sounds like an Avenger movie or something. When it all comes together, right? When we go back to our triangle, when your purpose is clear, when you have a good balance of ethos, pathos, and logos, and it's in the right context, you will achieve maximum persuasive effect. The country will listen to you. You will get the girl. Your mom will give you the car. It'll all come together when you use it. When it all comes together, you achieve that maximum persuasive effect. So before I take your questions, and again, folks, you may, as you're doing your task today, want to come back to this handout. Okay, I would actually encourage it as you're writing today to make sure you come back to this part of the handout in particular. Clearly understand the difference between ethos, logos, and pathos. Okay, so here's task 2.4, and here's what I'm going to have. Sorry, here's task 2.2. First thing you need to do, actually, let me pause there for a second. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Questions, comments, concerns about anything I could clarify for you? All right, think about it, and then at the end, we'll come back to that question. So here's what you're going to do. Start, you know, do this after. And again, guys, this handout that I'm, oh, shoot, you can't see this, can you? Give me a sec. You can find this handout, task 2.2, Persuade Us. If you go to task 2.2 in D2L, you will see It's right here. Okay, these are the instructions. So you're going to start once you're on this doc. Yeah, Mia, thank you. I'll talk about that right now. Great question. So you're going to start by going File. You're going to make a copy of this, and then you are going to place it in your rhetorical analysis folder. Okay, so you've got all those folders. You've been putting things in the toolbox so far. That was the first folder. Now you're going to use your rhetorical analysis folder. Okay, make sure you call it your names 2.2 task. Okay, then what I'm going to ask you to do, and we'll look at this, we're going to take a look at a sample persuasive letter. Okay, someone who put the whole thing together. And you're going to note how the writer uses the rhetorical appeals of pathos, ethos, and logos. And you can also be aware of the organization. We talked about organization in task 1.5. And you're going to see that it's been annotated using Google Docs, as we did, in task 1.5. And then you're going to create your own letter. So you're going to read this letter, and it's really short. So here, we'll take a look at this letter right here. And the letter was written by a mother to President Saddam Hussein, evil dictator in the early 90s. He's been captured and killed. And you're going to have a letter. This one's a little shorter than 300 words. Let's see, actually, the total length of this one is Control-Shift-C. This is 220. So it's just slightly shorter than yours. And you're going to write a letter based on one of these three prompts. Okay, the racial injustices in the States versus Canada, students who may or may not have suffered consequences from not doing schoolwork, and the last one you could choose is about how social distancing revealed true friendships. You're going to choose one of those, and you're going to turn it into a letter. Okay, now, when you write the letter, let's go over the instructions together. First of all, be organized using either the letter above, the sample persuasive letter, or some of the tactics we discussed in task 1.5. So start with a clear topic sentence, explain each of your reasons, and end with a wrap-up sentence. So however you organize it, you want to make sure that it's, here's my first reason, then you move on to a second reason, and then maybe a third reason. In your response, you need to use at least 2 of the rhetorical appeals. Okay, so this is the key. When you're writing it, you have to use ethos and pathos, or pathos and logos. If you want to use all 3, you can, but you have to make sure that you've used the rhetorical appeals. Darko, personal experience falls always into pathos. It's a great one. Personal experience is always pathos. Oh, no, sorry, let me rephrase. Depends on how you use it. Okay, so if you talk about, well, no one loves me, no one will ever go to prom with me, that would be pathos. However, if you say, the last girl I dated could tell you I really treated her well, that would be more so like ethos. So it sort of depends on how you use it. Okay, depends on how you use it. Dark, let me know if that did not answer your question, okay? And then make sure you proofread. Okay, be clearly written using the proper conventions of English. There are marks for communication. Okay, then once you're done writing, you're going to annotate it, just like we did here, meaning you're going to tell me in the column how you used each of the appeals. This is the first time I'm doing this. I've done this assignment many times online, but sometimes I can't tell if the student's trying to use pathos or ethos or logos. So you annotating your own response, and it just takes you a minute or two, will really be helpful in me being able to see, okay, they understand what pathos is or what ethos is, okay? Once you're done your letter, you are going to post it on the discussion page, not the doc. So what you would actually do, so you're going to write this letter, then you'll just copy this part of it, and you're going to post it in the 2.2 discussion page. So just your letter, I want you to post in the discussion page so other students can see it, because part of this assignment is responding to somebody. I mean, you could say, I agree, wow, excellent reasoning. Or you could say, well, have you thought about this? What do you think about this? Oh, Daniel, who should we address the letter? If you can see on the screen, just address it to dear class. Okay, dear class. Another good question. And then I want you to submit your annotated letter. You're going to submit your annotated letter just to me. So if we go to 2.2, it's all listed here. So when you're done writing your letter, you're going to hand it in to me. As you guys have been doing a great job. You gotta get me the link so that I can see your annotations, like in the margins. You're like, this is pathos, this is ethos. But then I also want you to just post the letter, cut and paste in the discussion forum, and then respond to at least one of your classmates polite. Okay? Laura, if we were to use logos, can we also be using citations? And should those citations be included? Laura, do you mean like totally not required, but you can totally do it? So if you're talking about, let's say you're choosing the second one. Okay, let's say you're choosing the second one about students who stopped doing work was announced. They are going to suffer consequences. Let's say you found like a quotation from an educational expert that talks about, like students who don't do work for significant periods of time have a decrease of 20% learning. If you did that, totally fine. Just make sure it's in quotation marks, and in the brackets, you tell me the name of the author for sure. We don't want another Joe plagiarism situation. So, no, include it both in your letter and in the discussion post. Laura, does that answer your question? Let me know if it doesn't. So, okay, so that's the task. You're choosing one of the letters. One of the topics and writing a letter. Isabella, another great question. How do we show the context? Well, Isabella, to be honest, I've already done that for you a little bit. I chose prompts that are relevant to our world today, right? I chose prompts that are relevant to our world today, right? So when you literally, let's say you chose about, let's say you write about social distancing shutdowns, you're going to use ethos, and you're going to say, since school's been shut down, of the 600 people on my Snapchat, I'm probably not, I'm kind of old. I don't know if I understand how it works even, but I only really have communicated. I've only had Zoom calls with 10 of them. That absolutely, that's actually logos. That's actually ethos. And it's also evoking the context. It's actually like, right, like by saying, since this happened, you're actually giving the context right there. If that doesn't answer your question, weigh in again, okay? But the context is already established, largely based on these prompts are very relevant to what we're living in right now. So they are. If I asked you a question like, should people smoke? That's not particular to our context right now. So the context is established a little bit already. Okay. Any other questions? Would I talk about overpopulation of people in color and incarcerated? Because I would usually think it's common knowledge, but I'm not. About would I talk? Laura, why don't you, Laura, send me an email. I think that's a specific question. Send me an email and I can help you with that. Yeah, Caitlin.
Are we allowed to use like personal pronouns like I, we?
100%.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I've got you on the spot. When you use I and we, which of the three appeals does that automatically create when you say things like I?
Ethos, because you talk about yourself.
Totally, right? When you say I felt disappointed, that is absolutely credibility because it's all about you. It's very good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Again, Laura, email me. I think you have a very specific question, so fire me an email when the chat's over, and I'll answer that question for you. Okay, last thing. No, good question. Julianne, rhetorical appeals. So our grade 11s at the school I teach at write what's called a personal essay. And a personal essay, it still has a purpose, right? Let's say you're writing an essay about the importance of your grandma in your life. Okay, so even though it's informal and you tell stories about, you know, spending time with your grandma, that sort of thing, it's still a persuasive type of essay. It's just not as formal, but you would absolutely use the appeal. When you tell about an experience your grandma and you had, totally tugging on the heartstrings, right? Totally pay those. So no, the appeals are used always. And rhetoric, please keep in mind, rhetoric is not just used in writing. It's used for everything. When you applied for a part-time job, let me ask you this question for a instant long distance high five. A resume. I go to a job interview and I bring my resume. Is that ethos, pathos, or logos? Is it ethos, pathos, or logos? A resume. Not anyone can answer, not just Juliet.
Isn't it ethos?
Yeah, it would absolutely be ethos, right? It would list, it would show your experiences, but it would also be logos, right? It would have like a whole ton of
Evidence to explain your like credibility to why you should apply, why you should be hired.
Absolutely. So it would have ethos, your credibility. It would also be logos because there's more than one. There's like, I had this job and this job. It makes me qualified. So we use rhetoric all the time. We use rhetoric all the time. Any other questions? Great questions. You know what? I was going to take a look with you at the sample persuasive letter, but I would invite you to do that on your own. It's right here again. It's the one written to Saddam Hussein. So before you start writing your own letter, take a read through. And I just want you to watch as I read through it. You'll see as you click on the things. So as I put my cursor on Dear President, you can see that comment. A few more instructions. You can start your own response similarly, right? Dear class. And then we go to the first paragraph. I'm writing to send to you to send my son, Thomas Hart Benton Ewald, home to his family. He was taken from the SAS hotel in Kuwait. I feel I have an obligation to appeal to you for 2 reasons, right? And then you can see the instructions start with the purpose as the topic sentence identified clearly in the introduction. So this is what you're going to do to your own letter. You're going to annotate it, good organization. And then as you read this paragraph, you'll see how she uses ethos, pathos, and logos. Again, just drag your cursor through and you'll see the comment kind of jumps out at you. All right. I wanted to be done just after 12. We're very, very close to that. I just want to know if there's any other questions, comments, concerns about task 2.2, writing the persuasive letter. You guys have asked great questions. Okay, fantastic. So just so you have a bit of a heads up, I am going to chat with you again on Monday. We're going to do another tutorial on, in addition to the appeals, Monday we're going to talk about style, how to use rhetorical devices like metaphors and juxtaposition and metonymy and a synodon and all these really cool devices. Once we, let me just show you over here. So today we're looking at appeals. We're going to look at the rhetorical devices on Monday. And then your task in 2.5, let me just show this to you, just so you have an idea of where we're heading. I don't know if any of you saw this. It was amazing. There was all these amazing speeches given to the graduating class through YouTube. You'll be choosing one of these speeches and analyzing it. You're going to look for the appeals. How does an expert speaker like Michelle Obama or Beyonce use the rhetorical appeals? And then we'll also, after Monday's class, you'll have a sense, how do they also use metaphor? How do they use parallel sentence structure? How do they use all these different sort of devices? And so that's where we're headed for the next week. We're going to sort of analyze how a writer achieves, and I'm going to tell a funny joke. I think it's funny before you go. How does a writer achieve, sorry, I'm on the wrong doc, their rhetorical purpose? How does the writer or the speaker or whoever the person is achieve their purpose? That's always what we're asking. If you're at a Catholic school during the school year, the right answer is always Jesus. If I ask you in religion class, what is brown with a big fluffy tail and enjoys peanuts, you're going to say Jesus, okay? In English class, in rhetoric class, the right answer is always the purpose. How does the writer achieve their purpose? What are they trying to say? What we're looking at in this next unit is, how do they do that? Okay, how do they do that? How do they use the appeals? How do they use the devices? But if you take a look at our calendar between now and next Friday, when you hand your essay in, that's what we're aiming to do. Last thing I might mention one more time, keep reading those ISP books. Okay, keep reading them. You guys have chosen great books. I know I recommended them, but I really hope you enjoy reading your books. Okay, any last questions? We started at 11:02. I wanted to go for 1 hour, right on schedule here. Okay, I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to turn my video on just so I can say goodbye. Just real quick, how was that? Was that helpful? Did that seem clear? How was that? I've never done online live tutorials with my classes in summer school. I always just post the instructions. Did that help? How was that? Did that help? Beautiful. All right, great. So I like the live because I can't see you, but I hope that helped. Okay, so we're not, again, take a look at our calendar. I got to share my screen again. Sorry, this one. Here we go. Okay, so maybe next time, if you didn't ask a question, it's weird to ask a question, right? Like, you know, we've never met each other. You don't know each other. I was going to have you turn on your cameras, but we won't do that quite yet. We're doing a few more live instructions, largely for the important things. Okay, just for the important things. Let me rephrase. It's not that the other assignments aren't important, but giving instructions for an assignment, I like to do that live so you can ask questions. I'm also not then getting 40 emails, right? It's easier to take them right here, right now. That's why we've decided on live. And it's been many months since many of you have seen a teacher teaching, so I thought this might help. All right, everybody, hasta la vista. Go take a break, and then I look forward to getting your letters. You know what, folks? Let's see. Let's say these are due by tomorrow. I mean, it takes time. Like, don't rush the letter. Get them in by tomorrow, and then look, for those of you who post your letter today or tomorrow, I still want you to weigh back in and agree or disagree with someone, and you might not do that till Sunday or Monday, right? You can't actually complete the discussion part of this until lots of people have posted. Oh, I wanted to show you one last thing before you go. So when you submit a discussion post, I just learned this myself. So let's go to our introduction one, and you go into the discussion. So look, there's going to be like 100 posts for, you don't need to read them all. Okay, you want to pick a couples that you can respond to, but let's use Daniel's. And so when Daniel writes his initial post, there's a option where he can subscribe. See where it says subscribe here? And what I would recommend, if you post, click that subscribe. And then if anyone responds to your message, you'll get a notification up top here. You'll get a notification that someone has responded. It's like, yeah, it's turning on notification. So then if like Daniel posted and, you know, Tyler and Laura responded and I responded, he may want to, you know, do the courtesy of replying back. And so I would recommend when you post your argumentative letter, your persuade us letter, you subscribe so that you can respond, right? And you're marked on your, you have to respond at least once, though I'm encouraging you to respond more than that. Engage in kind of a bit of a discussion, and the subscribe allows you to be notified if someone has commented on your work. Okay, that is it. Have a wonderful day. I'm going to end the chat now. Bye, everyone.